Welcome to the Cursed Hatake. You are listening to Blind Hyuga, Naruto's Celestial Legacy, a full 3-hour cinematic audio drama in alternate timeline fanfiction. Because this video is a fan-created story, all audio is generated using text-to-speech technology. If you enjoy the script and the concept, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is what makes these long-form sagas possible. Now settle in. The new destiny begins. The Cursed Hatake presents Blind Hyuga, Naruto's Celestial Legacy. Chapter 1, The Celestial Price. The world remembers him as Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Flash, a kind smile, a brilliant mind, and a destiny that made him the fourth Hokage. But the story you know is a shattered timeline, a whisper of what could have been. In this reality, the boy was born a prisoner of perfection. Minato was a Hyuga, the greatest prodigy his clan had seen in a generation. His Byakugan was flawless, his control over the Juken absolute. Yet the same genius that brought him praise in the village brought him silence and suspicion within the Hyuga compound. The Hyuga clan was not meant for love, only duty. Their destiny, they believed, lay fixed to the stars, not the soil of Konoha. But one fateful day, Minato shattered that destiny. He fell in love with a girl whose spirit was as fierce as her hair was red, Kushina Uzumaki. Their love was the sun meeting the moon. Impossible, yet undeniable. Kushina, fiery and loud, was the antithesis of the Hyuga's rigid pride. To Minato, she was the freedom his clan had stolen from him. For years, they kept their bond a secret, fearing the wrath of the Hyuga Elders. Then came the inevitable, a conversation that changed the course of fate. Minato stood before the clan council, before the leaders who guarded their purity like a sacred scripture. Hiroshi and Sora, the Hyuga Elders. Minato didn't ask for permission. He presented a fact that was both a challenge and a curse. Minato, you shame Hamura's line, but to take the Uzumaki, a Jinchuriki, into our blood, this is heresy. Elder Hiroshi's voice was the sound of freezing water. Minato did not flinch. He stood taller than any of them, his will ironclad. He spoke of love, of the future, of a child who would inherit the power of both clans. Elder Sora rose, his eyes narrowed with ancient hatred. Unworthy. Your child is not a legacy, Minato. It is a biological error, a taint waiting to fracture. You will terminate the pregnancy, or you will be forever severed from the Hyuga blood in the village. The choice was never a choice at all. That night, Minato Namikaze, the Hyuga prodigy, abandoned his clan, his title, and his destiny within Konoha. He left with Kushina, carrying the future of two bloodlines bound for exile. The elders did not mourn. They merely inscribed his name on the scroll of traitors. The stain on their bloodline was removed, or so they thought. But a secret power does not simply vanish. The forging of the Hyuga and Uzumaki bloodlines on Earth caused a tremor that echoed across the vast silence of space. A tremor that was felt on the moon. High above, separated by centuries of time, in the vacuum of space, resided the descendants of Hamura Otsutsuki, the pure moon order. They were a faction of zealous loyalists, bound by a twisted interpretation of Hamura's legacy, the purification of the earth and the perfection of the Byakugan bloodline. Their leader, Seigan Otsutsuki, sat upon his throne, his voice a low thunder. Seigan was the divine general, a descendant who saw himself as Hamura's chosen successor. He used his evolved Byakugan not just to see chakra, but to sense the future of the bloodlines below. And what he sensed, he feared. The taint has begun to gestate, Seigan's voice echoed across the barren moonscape. A hybrid of earthbound impurity and celestial power. It is an abomination, or it is the living key to the pure Tenseigan. Seigan gathered his inner circle. 4 warriors, each a master of celestial conflict. The first was Tonari Otsutsuki, the ideological zealot, driven by the absolute belief that humanity must be destroyed for its corruption. The second was Sora Otsutsuki, the strategist, a master manipulator and forbidden sealing expert who saw the child not as an abomination, but as a fascinating new lock to pick. Third was Akito Otsutsuki, the berserker. Raw power, sheer brutality, and a simple creed. Strength alone determines worth. And finally, the divine general himself, Saigon, the cold, calculating mind, obsessed with his own supremacy. Their mission was simple. On the night the child was born, they would descend to Earth. They would not allow a bastard bloodline to contaminate Hamura's work. They would destroy the child, or they would capture him to forge the ultimate Byakugan power. The fate of Minato and Kushina's family was no longer a local ninja feud. It was a celestial war. Back on Earth, Minato and Kushina had found a hidden sanctuary, a remote Uzumaki safe house, guarded by complex seals. They had hope. They had each other. They prepared for the birth of their son, the child who would be named Naruto. They thought the greatest danger was the trauma of the nine-tailed seal. They were wrong. The final days of Kushina's pregnancy were a time of quiet peace. They talked of names, of futures, of the great life their son would have away from the suffocating judgment of the Hyuga. Minato, despite his banishment, still felt the pulse of Konoha. But his duty was now singular, to his wife and his child. He's going to be a genius, Minato, just like his father. He'll look at the world and he'll see things no one else does. Kushina's voice, though strained by the upcoming birth, was full of Uzumaki defiance. He'll have your spirit, Kushina. That's all he needs. Minato, the man who had abandoned the Hyuga's bloodline rigidity, now only cared for the spirit of his family. But the gentle promise of that life was already being fractured. The seals Minato had meticulously placed began to hum, a desperate warning. The celestial interference of the Pure Moon Order was crossing the threshold. They had been found. The safe house exploded. The Pure Moon Order had arrived. Saigon Otsutsuki stood at the fissure, his eyes glowing with cold power. Flanking him were Tonari, Sora, and the massive, muscle-bound Akito. Minato Hyuga, you have disgraced the purity of Hamura. We have come to claim what is rightfully ours, to destroy the taint before it is born. Minato placed Kushina behind the last intact seal barrier, his focus absolute. He activated his Byakugan, the eyes of his birthright, now blazing with defiance. His chakra cloak shimmered yellow, mixing the power of the Hyuga and the speed of the yellow flash. The battle began with a brutal simplicity. Minato knew he couldn't beat all 4. He aimed for the most dangerous. He shunshined past Akito, the berserker, and engaged Saigon directly. His Juken strikes were precise, aimed at disrupting the delicate chakra pathways of the divine general. Saigon countered with a massive lunar chakra pulse, grinding the ground beneath them. But Minato used the flying thunder god to evade, reappearing inches from Sora, the strategist. His Hyuga training made him a master of close-quarters combat. His Namikaze skill made him impossible to predict. Sora unleashed her celestial blade jutsu, energy swords that could cut through dimensions. Minato deflected with a kunai, using the opening to strike her with a single disabling Juken blow. Sora staggered, stunned. Tonari, the zealot, stepped forward, his eyes burning with fanaticism. He began to charge his Tenseigen chakra mode, preparing a blast that would wipe the entire sanctuary off the map. Minato's grunted exertion. He used a desperate chain of seals, teleporting himself and Akito, the berserker, away from the core of the battle, throwing the brute into a distant forest just as Kushina cried out in pain. The birth had begun. The war was now a race against time. Akito was returning. Sora was recovering. Saigen was focusing his power, and Kushina, the Jinchuriki, was in the throes of childbirth, a moment of ultimate vulnerability. Akito returned, enveloped in his lunar frenzy mode, his strength multiplying exponentially. He was a tidal wave of celestial rage, aiming a single cataclysmic punch at Kushina's barrier. Minato knew the barrier would fail. The barrier shattered. Kushina was exposed, her chakra spent, her body screaming. But Minato was there in an instant, taking the full force of the punch, using his Juken to redirect the chakra flow. But the physical damage was immense. Minato coughed up blood. "Stop, Minato Hyuga. Look at your family. Surrender the child to us. We can purify him, elevate him to a true celestial being. Do not force us to destroy him." Toneri's voice was genuine, but his intent was twisted. Minato spat blood, his eyes locked on Toneri. He saw the genuine, twisted belief in the zealot's eyes. But he also saw a hint of hesitation, a chance. Minato knew he couldn't beat the power. He had to beat the will. "My son will have his mother's spirit, and he will not be a prisoner of your creed." He moved with the terrifying speed of desperation. He simultaneously threw marked kunai at Saigen and Toneri, teleported Kushina a safe distance away, and began weaving the seals for a Forbidden Uzumaki technique. A seal meant to drain the life force of the caster and permanently bind the target. Saigen recognized the seal immediately, a curse of the Uzumaki that even the Otsutsuki feared, but it was too late. Minato completed the technique, binding Saigen's power and channeling his own life force into the curse. The force of the sealing technique sent a devastating celestial feedback shockwave. In that agonizing moment, Kushina gave birth. The baby's weak cry was the first sound of the new era. Minato saw his son's face, a final, beautiful image, just as his life force was completely spent. Minato Namikaze died, but the shockwave, the furious, despairing energy released by Saigen as he was mortally wounded by the seal, had one final, tragic consequence. It struck the newborn child. It did not kill him, but it sealed his destiny. Kushina, weak but alive, reached for her son, gazing into the eyes that should have held the pure, white power of the Byakugan. But the shock had taken his sight. His eyes were milky white, opaque and sealed. Naruto Uzumaki Hyuga was born blind. The pure moon order retreated, dragging their mortally wounded general, Saigen. The mission had failed. The child was alive, and Minato's sacrifice had sealed their leader's power. But a new destiny had been forged, a destiny rooted in darkness, fueled by sacrifice and bound for the stars. This is where the story truly begins. The blind child, marked by loss and celestial destiny, grew up in the shadow of a mother's grief and a clan's rejection. He was an outcast, a prodigy without sight. In Chapter 2, we will explore the blind prodigy, how Naruto learned to see the world through a new chakra perception, his conflict with the Hyuga Elders, and the forging of a complex forbidden bond with Hinata Hyuga. Don't miss Chapter 2. Like this video, subscribe to the Cursed Hatake, and let us know in the comments, how will blind Naruto master the Juken?